Science fiction, the great teacher, the great inspiration. It helps us see the endless possibilities of life. So let's be inspired together.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
Sending out interceptors. We have taken them completely by surprise.
Hey everybody, it's the Commodore. Glad everybody's here. Guess what? I just come up with a great idea on how they can do a final episode of Strange New Worlds. And I come up with this when I was taking a shower, as always. And I was like, wow, that's a good idea. I mean, my idea, I think, has a way of satisfying both the young and the old audiences. Okay. This is how they'll do it. Okay. Say they do an episode or something like that, the final episode, and I think, I'm not saying I hope it ends soon, but whenever they get around to doing it, okay, whenever they're tired of doing, I'm watching smoke here behind me. What they ought to do is this: do the ending, jump ahead, I guess, unless they want to do a whole 10-year series with Strange New Worlds. I don't know if they will or not, but if they don't, they can, the last episode, they can skip ahead 10 years or how many years they got left to the point where Captain Pike has the accident and that, paralyzes him, scars him and everything. What they can do from that point is go towards the last few minutes of the Menagerie Part 2, okay, when Captain Kirk asks Spock to bring Pike to the transporter room, okay? And what they can do is they'll show Pike and Spock going down the corridor together, all right? They go into the transporter room and Nurse Chapel's there, okay? And maybe Lieutenant Uhura is there. And, anybody else that might still be on the Enterprise after Strange New Worlds, And they can all be there to wish him well as they beam him down to Talos 4. Before Spock does, he shares one final mind meld with Pike, because really that's the only way you're going to be able to speak to him. Otherwise you hear this beep, 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 which is really kind of bland. But to finally have this final goodbye between the two of them, they could have Spock and Pike in the mind meld, and Spock will see Pike as he was before the accident, and the two of them will share some final words and part ways, as it were, and send him down to Talos 4. And that way, it gives sort of an ending to Strange New Worlds, and it satisfies and doesn't step on canon with the original, with the older fans, okay? Because, the way Menagerie ended Part 2, we didn't see what happened after Spock walked out of the room there with Pike. We just see another shot of Kirk looking at images from Talos 4, and that's where the story ended. But with this idea, we can actually go a little bit further with it to make sort of a, sort of an ending to Strange New Worlds at the end. At this finally, because I think that's really a better way than some people were, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to see him get, have this happen, or find some way to have him avoid it. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think Pike at some point is going to finally realize that there's no way he can change what's to come, okay? That the accident's going to happen. And if he tried to change, he'd be less of a person than he really is. Actually, because he's a person who's who was trained under duty and stuff like that, he knows that his duty would require him to try to save those crewmen who were going to get killed in there, and so he would sacrifice himself for them, and that's the kind of person he is. That's the kind of leader he is, and he's not gonna change that. He's just gonna have to accept it, that that's what happens. Okay, but Spock will give him a better way to end his career by giving him some of what he had back, which is really a good way to end it, because it's be like Spock's final kindness to his old friend, bringing him to Talos 4 to kind of give him a life, at least with somebody, another human down there that he otherwise would not have had. So it would actually add more dimension to what happened in the Menagerie, as we see Spock doing all these things to help Captain Pike, because really, for the most part, what we see is Spock doing something. We think, what the hell's the matter with Spock? Because we don't understand the connection between the two of them. But after we watch this series, Strange New Worlds, we're going to see that connection there, and then we're going to finally understand that Spock really had no choice. He had to do this, regardless of what it was going to do to his career. And he shared Pike's fear, I guess, of what was going to happen. He didn't want to see Pike that way, so he couldn't undo what had been done, but he could at least let the Telosians give him the illusion that he's not handicapped in any way, that he could still live his life. Even if it's an illusion, he'd still have something to finish his life with, So I think that would be a sort of a romantic sort of ending for the show and for Captain Pike, and that would be a good way to end Strange New Worlds. I mean, it kind of makes that connection to TOS and Kirk and all them, and it's a good way, I think, to say, okay, and we pass the baton. So I don't know, what do you guys think? I mean, that's my idea, so what do you guys think of it? So let me know, give me some idea here, some feedback. Now, as for the episode for the week, I thought it was a good episode. I mean, yeah, it was Enterprise docked at Space Station Starbase 1, which is a very interesting starbase, by the way. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Battlestar Galactica, where they had that ship that had like the domes and had all the little environments in them. Okay, it kind of reminds me of that, and it's an interesting starbase, Starbase 1. And I like how they would put in the background the Enterprise sitting beside the starbase while things were going on. It sort of reminded me of the TOS, when they would show the little tiny Enterprise model hanging in a window, just to show that it's out in but they remembered that and they put that in there, so I thought that was good. And I liked how at the beginning of the show, where they showed Spock, Vulcan Spock fighting human Spock, and you could hear the music in the background that they recreated from TOS when Kirk and Spock were fighting on Vulcan. I mean, I laughed and I was like, oh, so somebody actually does remember, and I was like, great, I'm glad they stuck that in there, even if it didn't sound the same. They still put this theme in there, so I was really happy that they put that in there. And they really, when they redid the I don't know if they built a set or if it was just CGI, but they recreated the environment of that fight, Amok Time, pretty well. I mean, yeah, they did add a few little extra things in there, but they didn't deviate all that far from the way it looked, and I was glad they didn't stretch it too far, like like they did with the bridge here on the Enterprise. I mean, they actually kind of kept it close to the way it looked on TOS. So I was like, wow. So it looked good. It looked better because they added more detail in the background, so you can see what's outside. Because from what I understand, that sits way up high. That arena sits way up on the top of a peak or something of a mountain. And so you get to see a little bit over the horizon of Vulcan, and I was like, wow, that's really nice. Because when you think about it, we don't really get to see Vulcan all that much. At least not all at once. I mean, it's like, we get to see bits and pieces here and there and stuff through episodes, but there's a lot there on Vulcan. There's a lot, and on Enterprise, thankfully they did show a lot of Vulcan on Enterprise, especially in season 4, where they actually went there, and you got to see some statues and things that were made. I would have liked to have seen more of the city that Spock's not Spock, but T'Pol's mother was living in. The only disappointment when they were showing T'Pol's mother's home looked too much like a home on Earth, like a human home, than it did a Vulcan home. I would think Vulcan homes would have a little different kind of architecture inside, for things. But that's that. So the episode was great, and I couldn't understand this Enterprise bingo game that the crewmen were playing. And I'm thinking, well, that's kind of, I know it sounds weird, but when I was in the military, we used to do bullshit like that when we was in, doing these stupid games, while we was working and stuff, and we didn't have, we weren't busy, and we would screw around, on the base and everything, and just, do some stupid, it's sort of like, it's typical, behavior of people that young. They'd be on a ship and they'd probably play around on the ship, like it's like their personal playground, and and they'd screw around with the turbo lifts. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I could see that. I could see that happening. I mean, not everybody on the starship is going to have, rock solid discipline. I mean, you got to figure that at least the people who aren't, haven't been there for that long, newcomers, are going to be all hyped up with energy and excited and everything to be there and all this stuff, and so they're going to go crazy looking at things and exploring the ship and everything. So I could see that. That was actually pretty good. It was sort of like, it gave a little bit of a nostalgic reminder to me about how it was when I first got in the military, and how it was when I was on my first assignment, and how I wanted to just drink everything in, and then we make play games around it, because I remember around the bomb dump, they used to have these big mounds of earth that surrounded the buildings that stored the bombs and shit, and I used to climb up on top of the mountains, and I would plant a flag up there, like I was climbing a mountain, and the guys on the bottom would tell me, "Get your stupid ass down off of that damn thing," So I would do that, and drive people crazy, but and then of course in the wintertime, because in Germany, they get winters out there like Maine do, and I'd slide down the hill on my back, because the coats that we'd wear, they had a nice strong canvas back, and that would make a good sled surface. So I'd slide down on the hill on my back, and I'd go right up on the other side of the bank, and I'd go like 7-8 feet in the air and land. So I mean, it was like, I don't know, I used to do crazy stuff, but that kind of reminded me of that, and so yeah, I mean, it just made me giggle a little bit when I was thinking of those crewmen, running around the ship and all that, and playing Enterprise bingo, something they create on their own, but I was surprised that that the story, the thing about Spock and his fiance, I guess, swapping bodies, and I was like, that, I often wondered about that, because we saw how Spock could put his Katra in Dr. McCoy in Star Trek II, and and I often wondered if it was possible to go all the way where they would just swap, because in Enterprise you had Surak sharing the conscience of whoever the hell accepted it, right? So apparently these Katras can go to anybody they want, Vulcan, I guess, or maybe human too, I guess, if it's not too dangerous. And is it possible that the other Vulcan could do the same in reverse, and that was funny that that was like an idea I had a long time ago, and then actually explored it on that episode. It's like, oh, so cool, they can swap bodies. And I was kind of a little bit funny because when they confronted Pike, what happened? I was kind of expecting, like, Pike going, what? Kind of having this crazy, like, what the hell did you do? Instead, he just kind of stood there and accepted it, which made it even more funny. It's like, here's a man who inside is like screaming, what the hell did these two people, and he's controlling it himself with with self-control. And it made the scene seem funnier that way, that he didn't blow up, but he was blowing up inside over this unbelievable thing that happened, probably never saw in his life, that two Vulcans had done. And now he's got to not only deal with what was going on with the meeting and stuff he was having with the aliens, but now he's got to try to fool them into thinking there's nothing wrong with Spock. And it was good that, when T'Pring was in Spock's body, she was sort of burying Spock in there, and Pike had to jump up there and sort of rescue Spock or T'Pring rather, from what she was doing, just to kind of remind her that, no, what you're doing isn't Spock, it's Spock is this, and I thought, that was a pretty good thing, because, sometimes in these shows where they have people doing this kind of phenomenon, swapping bodies or whatnot, they always somehow, the person in the wrong body always manages to do something that is, out of character for the body they're in. And this time they didn't do that. Okay, they actually left T'Pring in as she is, and Pike had to actually save her out of the situation that she was burying Spock in, So I thought that was a good move on Pike. And the fact that Pike was intuitive enough to understand what these aliens, how they behaved around different species, he watched them closely, and he figured out how he could get them to side with the Federation. I was like, that was pretty good, because that's sort of like something Picard would have done. I mean, that's like, Picard understanding, these people, how they think and all that. Pike kind of did that on the fly, basically watching how they was interacting with them, and he figured, well, you know what, I'm going to try this, because, he figured that was his best shot. And he jumped in there and he said what he said to him, and then they all of a sudden raised the flag on their ship. And I like their ship, by the way. It looked a lot like that Bajoran solar ship that Sisko had built, him and his boy there. And I thought that was a good thing, because just because an ancient race had built one of those things doesn't mean that maybe there's some other species out there who use that kind of technology, as a as sort of a must, for ships and stuff to have. And I was like, that's pretty cool, and at the end when they were showing number one and Noonien Singh there on the hull of the Enterprise, signing their name on an old scar that the ship had, was pretty cool, because again, that's sort of a naval tradition you'd see on some ships that's seen a lot of action, where people would sort of kind of memorialize a piece of the ship somehow and put their name around it. The thing is that with that scene was that was like, oh, that's a little too much, too far advanced. It was them being outside of the ship and protected by the force field. Now, the only time we ever saw them ever on the ship like that without a spacesuit on was in motion picture, but V'ger had to create a bubble sort of around the saucer with an oxygen, gravity, environment for them to be able to exist in. But never, never have they ever tried just to use a force field to contain a gravity situation. I mean, they could have at least had them wear gravity boots or something like that while he was out on the hull. Or maybe just wear a spacesuit. I mean, they could have just wore a spacesuit and been out on the hull. I mean, that wouldn't have been a bad idea. But going out there, I mean, that what they were doing was an idea I had come up with a couple of years ago for my Star Trek story that I was writing, where there's sections of the hull on on the Horizon, USS Horizon, that have doors that open up and people can walk out onto the deck as the ship is in space, and the ship is equipped with little sort of like bubbles around each of these areas where it contains oxygen, and the hull plating is gravity, artificial gravity plating, just like inside the ship. And so people can enjoy, you know, looking out into space without having the window there or whatever, and just feel like they can go out there and, you know, set up a telescope or whatnot, just look at the stars from outside the hull, you know, and get a 360-degree panorama, if you will, of their out in the hull. Be sort of like, you know, when the ship's not flying at warp, because if you're in warp, you really can't see shit anyway. If you're out on the hull, there's nothing to look at. But if you're not in warp and you're just orbiting a planet, well, that's a good place to enjoy the view, you know, where you don't have to run to a window and just look through a window. You can actually look out into the hull and get a nice view of it. So you'd have these little sections on the hull where the doors would open and let people out onto the hull. And so that was like an idea I had for like my Star Trek stories that take place in the later part of the 25th century, where they have this technology. So I was kind of a little bit surprised to see it actually realized on Strange New Worlds, but in a different way. But I was figuring, well, that's just a little too advanced for the 23rd century. I don't think they'd be able to do that, at least not without spacesuits, because I'd say they could do it with the spacesuits on, gravity booting and boots and stuff like that, but not just walk right out there as they did and do that. I don't know. Some people might say, well, if they couldn't do that without the spacesuits, then, you know, why would they have gone out there, you know, have the hatches to be able to take them out of the ship? And I'm thinking, well, that's probably because if crew members have to go out there to do repairs of the ship while, you know, it's in, you know, needing of it, they just have these little hatches on the hull that open up where they can, you know, wear a spacesuit and climb out of there, just like they did on Enterprise. Remember when they hit that mine and they had to do some repairs on the outside of the hull, you know, and they get the crew members to walk out onto the hull so they can do repairs, because you can't do all the repairs inside the ship. Sometimes you got to get somebody outside the ship to do repairs there on that side as well, for the sake of keeping, you know, atmosphere inside, you know.
fresh and full of life. Fresh goes better with Mentos freshness. Fresh goes better with Mentos fresh and full of life.
Mentos, the fresh maker.
Some people have a deep, abiding respect for the natural beauty that was once this country. And some people don't. People start pollution. People can stop it. Write for Pollution Booklet, Box 1771, Radio City Station, New York.
Be a part of the entertainment value of a lifetime.
I loved it.
It was the best performance I've seen in a lifetime.
I loved the show. I liked it very much. He's a very entertaining man. It's well worth the money.
Now appearing in Charlottetown, coming to Halifax November 6th to the 18th, and St. John November 20th through the 26th.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. All right, so the other part of the episode that I liked was seeing Dr. M'Benga able to assist Spock and T'Pring to get their Katras back to where they were, using a rather I would call, maybe they would call it sort of a primitive way of doing it, but it seems to work. Which goes to, you know, the background when we see M'Benga for the first time on TOS. You know, when McCoy says, well, he's got training in Vulcan physiology, so, you know, I think it was the what episode was it? What the hell? I can't remember now what it was. It's where Spock gets shot by a flintlock there in okay, anyway, it doesn't come to mind. But because Spock was shot, they bring him up to this Enterprise sickbay emergency room, and they have to get the bullet out, basically, and at the same time Spock's got to recover. And if you remember, Christine had to slap him, you know, to make him fight his way back to consciousness. And she was reluctant to do it, but M'Benga was certain that that's what had to be done. So this episode here of Strange New World shows M'Benga knows something else about Vulcans. So that sort of reinforces the idea that yes, M'Benga does know a lot about Vulcan physiology, and he's always that kind of shows that there was a lot of things he knows about Spock. Which kind of begs the question then, you know, why isn't he the chief medical officer on the Enterprise and TOS instead of Dr. McCoy? Because clearly he's been on the ship longer, right? And, you know, I don't know if you could say M'Benga has always been on the Enterprise even through Kirk's 5-year mission, but he pops in once in a while, I think in the second season. You know, and so I guess you're supposed to assume that he's there as part of the staff, right? So can we assume that, you know, that maybe he was always on the Enterprise until the end of Kirk's 5-year mission too? And if so, then why was he not the chief medical officer then at the time? Is it because somehow they found out about what he was doing with his daughter with the transporter buffer and kind of got him in trouble or something, and maybe you had to take a position reduction in sick bay. You know, I don't know. But, what? What? How the hell did you activate Alexa? She meowed and the friggin' thing come on. Why you tell Jeffrey what you did. You tell me what you did, Smoke. How the hell did you make that thing come on? Goodies. So is it true that, I mean, that maybe that's what it was, that maybe Mavinga, you know, somehow got in trouble by something he did? Maybe it was related to his daughter being in the buffer for so long or not, I don't know. But for some reason, when McCoy came on board, he got that position, you know, and so they'll have to explain that, especially if they're trying to say that Mavinga's always been part of the Enterprise crew. If not, then I guess can you say that Mavinga would come aboard the ship once in a while or something? But if that's true, then why the hell would he be coming and going? So I don't know. I would think that it's more reasonable to think that he was just part of the crew all along, from Pike to Kirk and you know, wherever. And at some point, he lost his position as a CMO, you know, chief medical officer, and he lost it to Bones. So I don't know. That's something that they'll probably have to address at some point, because I don't think you can have two CMOs on the ship. There's got to be one of them's got to have the final word on things. Hey, get over here. You quit trying to reach for that. Come on. Down. Oh, this cat loves hours of play. They say, oh, a cat should have 30 minutes of play, you know, 30-minute segments of play, like an hour total each day. Not this cat. This cat wants like 6-7 hours of play all friggin' day. And she cries when I don't give her enough running and stuff to do. She won't quit either until I give it to her. Can't buy enough toys to keep her satisfied. This is just one cat. Imagine a house full. Melissa's mother, they got four cats in her house, and as far as I know, Melissa's the only one that plays with them up there. I don't think Joe does. He ain't got the energy to play with cats, so the cats have to entertain themselves up there, and they don't look like they do much entertaining. They're sort of like in the house, but they don't really do much. So they're probably older cats, I would imagine, but they do have 2 kittens up there. So those cats are going to be a handful for her parents to deal with. But hey, you quit looking at that, because I know what you're thinking. So yeah, that kind of ran across my mind as to, you know, how are they going to explain that in Strange New Worlds about Dr. Mavinga, you know. Because as it looks now, I mean, he's the CMO right now with Nurse Chapel working under him. But hey, get out of that bag! Get out of there! Get out! Oh, God almighty! Smoke, come on! You wanted to play? I'm playing here. So there's got to be an answer there somewhere. I just ain't seeing it. But when the writers get to that point, they probably will have something. Another possibility the writers will do is they'll just end the series just short of what's going to happen to Pike later on, and they won't even address it, which is something that is more likely to happen than my idea, because the writers don't seem to want to think that far ahead on anything that they do. I mean, even though with Strange New Worlds they've been doing pretty well, okay, I gotta say they've been doing pretty well with the stories on Strange New Worlds. So I'm hoping that maybe it's because they got a couple good writers there on the show that's been, you know, leading the way, as it were. Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that's what they'll do, as is what kind of idea I had, where it kind of links the two TV shows together somehow. And you know, I feel like, you know, if they just avoid it, it's sort of like a cheat, because, you know, everybody's sort of, you know, wondering how they don't want to see, you know, Captain Pike end up that way, the way it was already set up in TOS, okay? And the fact is, you know, if they don't do that, then obviously that's going to change all you know, canon, basically. And I don't think anybody's going to like that after watching the show, that they go ahead and take the liberty of just saying, no, this didn't happen. You can't do that, because they did 3 episodes about Pike on TOS, you know, with that. So you can't just rewrite that or undo it. I mean, come on. And if you change that, then, you know, then you're going to be saying, well, it's an alternate reality. And you know, I think some of the fans have had enough of that stuff for a while. So they're either not going to address it, or if they do, they should do it the way I suggested, because that's the more honorable way to end the show. And I think it would satisfy both old and new fans of Star Trek, because it keeps the canon and it gives a nice ending, sort of a romantic ending for Pike, as he should have, you know. So anyway, that's pretty much all I gotta talk about now, because for the cat is gonna drive me nuts. So I will talk to you again later. So take care out there. Keep your ears open on your local COVID news so you can stay healthy. And I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We are not sending out interceptors. We have taken them completely by surprise.
Because I think that the tradition of an engineer is a Scot. You know, because all the great motor ships and the steamships of the world were built in the Clyde.